This is the Real Change Wilmington Podcast, Episode 17, Wilmington City Schools, Part 3, Financials, with our guests today, Curt and Kim Deweese.
The school district is a vital part of the community. As I talked about, we take everybody in. A lot of people in Wilmington don't leave Wilmington. And so as they get educated to go back out, they're going to be the people we see every day. So we may get them for 12 years. This community might get them for 40 or 50, 60 more. And education on that part, home values. I mean, we live in the district and the school and who comes and who's it attract and what businesses are here. That's all interconnected. The whole community, you can't take a piece of any of them out and it survives.
What is going on, everybody? This is your host of the Real Change Wilmington Podcast, Dustin Pierce.
And I'm Emily Spencer, the co-host.
Yes, and we have a pretty awesome episode for you today. We're thankful that Curt, the Business Development Director at Wilmington City Schools, and Kim Deweese, the Treasurer, took the time to chat with us today and answer some questions about the school's finances and the impacts the levy has, or the income tax levy has on those finances. So we are recording in the basement of Peel and Lundy, just for time restrictions and stuff. It made the most sense. And so if you're hearing some echoes, that's why. We'd love to have a permanent studio sometime soon. So if you know somebody who has a building for sale, we would love to have a chat with them. Maybe relocate our office and our podcast to those facilities. Specifically, if you know Larry Roberts, who owns the radio station on the corner of South and Main Streets, we've been eyeing that building. So maybe
the Derbyshire building?
The Derbyshire building. It was a radio station, and we would love to turn it back into a radio station for the 21st century, a podcast station.
A podcast station.
Yeah, to deliver our news as well, our paper. It would just be great for the community, I think. So if you have connections, this is my shameless plug that we would love to have those conversations.
Larry, if you're listening, we want to talk to you.
Yeah, we do business with your daughter every single week, buying tons of cookies for our clients. So yeah, throw us a bone. A Curt bone. No, don't throw us Curt bone.
Curt bone saves.
So, Emily, what are some takeaways from just these interviews in general that you've had?
I think that it's really neat to see how many of these people are alumni of Wilmington. And I mean, when we're teenagers, we all have these big plans that we're going to get out of our small town and rule the world and never go back. But I think it's a real testament to see when people have such a passion for their city, the education in their city, what have you, and they either come back or they move their family here because they want to see greatness. And I think that that's just really interesting that they're still, from the time they were students until now, they're advocating for a great school system.
Yeah, I was really inspired by Matt Spradlin's story, just how it seemed like he was really excelling in his career or music career. And then he's bringing that same level and that standard of excellence into the schools. I know that the band program has done really well the past couple of years. I hear a lot about it in the news. So I'm thankful for definitely people like that who bring their standard level of excellence into our community. So I know I've told this story twice now, but if it's your first time checking into this podcast, I wanted to give you a brief overview of, kind of the motivation and intentions behind this podcast. So I'm someone who has voted both ways on the school levy. Emily is someone who has voted no ways because
I've been afraid to vote until this point. Let's just be real. She's
been afraid to vote. So I have had to educate her on how to fill out a ballot and put it under her pillow for the ballot fairy. And that's how elections get done. That's what she can't tell people who she's voting for, or it won't come true. But yeah, I'm someone who has voted both ways on the school levy for a variety of reasons. And I think those reasons are somewhat reflective in the community as well, based on articles in the news journal, things that I see online, and just conversations that I've had. So those concerns would be things about leadership, discipline, curriculum, academics, cultural, political issues, and, just generally not wanting to pay more taxes. So we wanted to, as the Real Change Wilmington podcast, we interview different leaders, organizations to get the inside scoop to help communicate what is going on in these organizations and just build a greater sense of community through firsthand information and kind of squash the grumbling that happens when we don't have that firsthand communication. So that's kind of where we're coming from. And then something that really changed my perspective on these schools. Basically, I was in a car with a couple of leaders from the community. I was invited to Portsmouth, Ohio to check out an innovation center down there, which is something like they're trying to convert the Masonic Lodge into. Hopefully, it's not like a final plan or anything, but they would like to see the Masonic Lodge be converted into more of a center for businesses and office spaces and event centers. So I got to be on that trip, and I was definitely the youngest person in the car and the most unconnected in that car as well. So I spent most of the trip just listening to what they had to say. And some of the stuff that they were reminiscing about was just the value that a public school has to build community. And as someone who is creating a resource for the community, that really struck a nerve with me and got me thinking differently about the value of the public school. And then another gentleman in the car just mentioned how the community just seems to maybe not realize that they can cause change in the school and get some of their concerns addressed in other ways besides just saying no and defunding the school. So those two things both resonated with me personally. So that's kind of some of the heart and attitude that Emily and I are bringing into these conversations. One, we want to respect the community's concerns and get them answered. And two, we want to just appreciate all the work that the schools are doing and help them communicate that with the community. Neither Emily and I are from Wilmington, but we're both very much for Wilmington, and we want Wilmington to succeed. So thanks for taking the time to listen to our podcast, and I hope you get some questions answered. But again, if you have more questions, please, just take the responsibility to reach out to Curt or Kim. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring in Curt Bone and Kim Deweese to chat about the school's finances. All right, Curt and Kim, welcome to the Real Change Wilmington podcast. Thanks for being here.
Hi.
So let's start off by just getting a background on you guys. Tell us about your family background and history in Wilmington. Curt, if you want to go first, that would be awesome.
Okay. Curt Bone, Wilmington City Schools, Director of Business Operation. Been in Wilmington since 1992 as a student at Wilmington College, and then left after there, started employment in Wilmington, and then started with Wilmington City Schools in 2004. So been there quite a long time. My family currently resides here in Wilmington, a graduate of Wilmington High School and a senior this school year. So, another graduate after this year.
What brought you to Wilmington College?
Just like the small town atmosphere. I also was close enough where I could commute. So I was still involved in campus, but I lived at home and commuted back and forth.
Okay.
Where are you from?
Originally from Jamestown.
Jamestown. Okay, so it's still Clinton County, right?
Just in north of Greene County.
Okay. Is Jamestown where they have the dairy farm, the Jersey Dairy, or?
Yes.
Okay, love that place.
Yeah.
All right.
Went to high school with Todd. Yeah.
Nice. Is Todd the owner of that?
Yeah.
Okay. That's crazy. Did you meet your wife in Wilmington, or?
I did. Yes. Yeah. So we met at a acquaintance wedding here and got married. Been married now almost 14 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Kim, what is your family background in history in Wilmington?
Well, my dad graduated from Wilmington High School, and me and my sister both graduated from Wilmington High School. My kids both graduated from Wilmington High School, so I've been in Wilmington my whole life. So came to work for the schools in 2002 as the payroll specialist, I guess is what they call it. And then 8 years later, I became the treasurer. So I've been there since 2002.
What did you do before Wilmington City Schools?
Before Wilmington City Schools, I worked at Ace Hardware for many years, like 13 years. I started off when I was in college. And then once I graduated from college, I became their business manager or account person for both their stores in Wilmington and Washington Courthouse. So.
And then your next step was Wilmington City Schools?
I had my second baby and I kind of took a break and I worked part-time for a CPA here in Wilmington for 3 years, and then I came to Wilmington.
Did you go to Wilmington College?
I did not. I went to Wright State.
Nice. So the next part of this interview is going to be just about tell us what you guys do, or what does your role look like? Curt, do you want to
Sure, we
go?
have enough time. I manage a lot of the classified staff, so that's all the staff that's non-teaching. So I have reports for transportation, food service, IT, and maintenance, custodial. So that staff reports to me, and then I help an area of expenditures, finance, do anything from negotiating contracts, safety plans, safety training, insurance, also represent the district on different boards such as the tax incentive review committees, CRAs for tax exempt for stuff for businesses. And then Kim and I handle a little bit of the HR and workers' comp stuff together.
Okay, so there's no HR department, it's just you guys tag team that?
Collectively.
Okay. I saw in the news journal that you were responsible for getting some security equipment.
Yes, as far as we do grants and stuff like that. So currently we're doing grants for camera systems, also working directly with the city for safe routes to schools to help do crosswalks. And that's really a big project that's going to be over the next couple of years, is improving safety on crosswalks and all the areas outside the school for traffic, stuff like that.
What does that look like exactly? So like there was the people that would help kids across the street. Is that what you're talking about?
Actual signage, such as flashing stuff. A lot of our crosswalks are older. The one on Romback with the new Romback project that has been updated for new signage, flashing lights, and the magnetic and fluorescent paint that's on the ground. All those will be done, plus improving of sidewalks such as homes, and just walkability to school. And that way drivers can see, plus new markings on the road.
Is that going to be especially for like the areas closest to the schools?
Those are at the schools. So at the crosswalks as they go from the residentials into the school property.
Nice.
Yeah, and those will all depend on the amount of funding that they get on those projects. But it is overall do a big arching plan and then fund those projects as they're able to do that.
Okay. Kim, describe your role.
My role, I'm responsible for all of the revenue and expenditures as far as paying the bills, making sure we're in compliance because we're audited every year by the state of Ohio. Anyone can go out and look at our audits on the Ohio State Auditor's website. I also do HR, prepare the contracts for the teachers. I do a lot. Payroll, yes, in charge of payroll.
You
Grants,
write grants.
I don't write the grants.
Okay.
I work with whoever wants the grant. Like if Nicole Qualm, the curriculum director, needs a grant because we do Title I, and a lot of federal grants are for things that are curriculum. So I work with her to fill in the budget for the grant, and then I draw down the funds as we spend them from the Department of Education. So, and then I file all the final expenditure reports for all the grants because you have to tell them exactly every penny you spent and where. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, so compliance is a big part of my job as far as auditors go.
So let's get into on your website, you have a revenue and expense chart that is very basic in terms of you have an actual 5-year plan that's way more in depth. So I emailed you earlier this week about, I was just doing some math, and the revenue for 2024 was expected to be like 5.5 million, but the deficit with the levy not passing would be 4.5 something-ish, about $1 million difference. And you explained it to me, but I didn't quite understand it. So what's the discrepancy there? Or?
It's not a discrepancy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a household budget.
Yeah.
You have money coming in, you have expenses going out. So we've looked at what our revenue was when we had the prior income tax, mm-hmm. and we were bringing in approximately $5 million. Okay. So we're looking at our expenditures over the next 4 years, and you can see there's a deficit now because we're not collecting that $5.4 million. That's not up in our revenue anymore.
Okay.
So when you take the revenue that we expect to receive without that income tax, minus the expenses that were accustomed, our usual ordinary expenses for operating, there's a deficit there. So we want to ask for the money that's going to make us whole again so that we can continue the things we've been doing. So that's why we asked for 0.75%, because that brought us to the point that we need to be in order to be whole again.
So previously you were making 5.5 million on the levy or on the tax, and the deficit is 4.5. What would you do with that? If you had the same amount of revenue, what would you do with that extra million, I guess?
Okay, well, so how it always works is you look at, whatever you bring in revenue and whatever you expend. If there's a deficit there, then you have carryover. We have carryover from prior years. Mm-hmm. So that's where that money goes. So if we spend $300,000, I'm just using general numbers. If we use $300,000 and we only spend $200,000, then that $100,000 gets put in our savings account, right, just like you would at home, to save for future projects, or a chiller blowing up, or we might need to purchase a new bus. Things like that.
And tax revenue is kind of, it's not a set amount.
Sure.
So depending so it just depends on how income comes in for each individual person. So that as the economy does better, that'll grow a little bit, and as the economy shrinks, we'll collect less on that.
Right. So we can't say we're going to get exactly $5.4 million and we're going to spend exactly $5.4 million. I mean, there's a lot of variables in this 5-year forecast.
But it's better to play it safe and have some cash reserves than get into the year and be out with some money.
Just like your normal household budget, you have a little bit of savings, and all of a sudden you lose the transmission in your car. You either have to get savings or you have to borrow the money to do that.
So either your 5-year forecast is publicly available, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we can talk about it. I was looking at it and it seemed like there was about $18 million in cash reserves. Is that right?
That's correct.
And so if the levy didn't pass, we would be fine for a couple of years. We would be draining our cash reserves for all those years. And then the last year of the 5 years, we have no cash reserves, and we got the money. What do those cash reserves do for those schools? Are you investing those money? Like, how much is it necessary to have $18 million in cash reserves? Like, just talk through that, I guess. Mm-hmm. What's the logic?
Right now, there's called a white paper, and it's specifically about schools and cash balances. And right now, a lot of schools have high cash balances. Now, when you think of $18 million, that's a lot of money. When I think of $18 million, that's 6 months of expenditures. So if everything fell apart, we're only good for 6 months. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's probably not going to happen, but, so they have put out this white paper that talks about how this happened. We've had all these federal funds come in. I don't think anyone was expecting for income to go up during COVID. So the white papers suggest, and it's not a law or anything, they suggest that you have at least 2 months worth of operating money on hand. We have about 6 months. So we do have more. So
and that's just wise budgeting for everybody, to have extra money. Like any business or person should have a reserve.
Right. So at some point, once we get through these federal funds and find out whether levy actually passes and we're going to have these reserves to spend on other things, then we need to come up with a plan for the board to find out how we want to expend those things on things for the students.
Okay. What are some ways to generate more revenue for the school? Or are there grants or fundraisers? Are fundraisers even that effective? I mean, you can't raise $1 million with a fundraiser, can you?
And the fundraisers are more for the student activities. Mm-hmm. Like the kids go out and raise money for football, or they go out and raise it for the band and things like that. So, we wouldn't raise a fundraiser for operating money. But there are other ways to raise money. Like I said, since 2002, you've heard this before, but maybe other people haven't. When we originally put the 1% income tax on the ballot, we promised that there would be no school fees. And we've never had pay to participate that I'm aware of. And then we promised updated technology, which we've done that. We've done the one-to-one initiative, Chromebook initiative at the high school, and we've got Chromebooks all over the district really right now for students to use. And then keeping updated textbook adoptions. But obviously we don't want to do those things. We don't want to charge the parents school fees and start paying, charging parents for pay to participate.
What are some things that we would have to like consider charging for, or what other school districts maybe charge for that we don't charge for currently that we might have to consider?
Those two things, school fees and pay to participate, probably. I think most schools.
So some of the area, by area, I mean, it could be 50 miles from here, or neighboring. Some of them pay anywhere from $250 up to $400 or $500 per sport.
Okay.
Some also charge a transportation fee for those sports events. Also, some will charge per class. So depending on what class you're in, your elementary would be it could be anywhere from $50 to $60 fee up to a high school fee just for academics could be $300, $400, $500, depending on what supplies you need for art or biology or something like that. That's had more lab based where you need more stuff. Yeah.
I don't know if it still is that way. It's how it was when I was in school. I went to Hillsborough. We had school fees that were due at the beginning of every semester. Well, they assigned it at the beginning of every semester, and you had to pay by the end of the semester. And it was about $50 a class if you had a lab class.
Yeah.
I think it would stink to have school fees too, because I know there's a lot of families in Clinton County who are divorced, and school fees become a very contentious matter with like divorced parents. So who's going to pay those fees and stuff?
Right.
So yeah. Well, with the school fees though, I mean, it seems like theoretically we could have fundraisers to cover those fees for some kids. So I'm assuming there's more than just school fees that need funding, right? What are the other things that need funding?
So kind of the way our budget breaks down, approximately 80% is people. So you're talking about personnel and benefits. And the other part of that, the other 20% is probably what you're talking about. So, fuel for buses, when fuel goes up at the pump for you and I, it's the same thing for the school district, but us getting 10,000 gallons at a time, going through that in about 6 weeks, that is pretty hefty. Also, recently parts increases and stuff like that for just repairing daily, tires. We cover 161 square miles with our buses, so there's a lot of wear and tear, just oil changes, brakes, just general stuff like that.
How much do buses cost?
How much does a bus cost?
Yeah.
The newest ones we just purchased was about $130,000
Okay.
a piece. So average life's 10 to 15 years, depending on the route and how many miles we put on them. We do run about 250 to 300,000 miles on them before we retire them. Like I said, with driving all over the county, our district's pretty large, that some of those rack up pretty fast. Some of the other costs, just daily operations, we're talking electric, water, gas. We do buy most of our stuff. Our electric gases are all purchased through our consortium. So we go together with other schools and purchase larger quantities so that we can have a reduced thing. And a lot of our contracts with that have, over this span where everybody else has seen this increase, ours has been pretty flat with our contracts expiring in about 2 years out to just at the edge of 2025. And then we'll have to start going back into the market to see where we are with cost of stuff.
And is that both of your jobs to like look at expenses and try to like not cut, but like find better deals all the time? I think I've heard you speak before about the electric situation, that you go out and like find deals. You were talking about a deal that you found or something.
Yeah, so on our end, we do it through our co-op. So our co-op bids 3 different of the utilities through whichever one you're a part of, APA, or actually through, what is it now, AES, because they merged with DP&L. But us being a member of that, they have attorneys and stuff that goes out and does a bid for all of Ohio to see who the suppliers are and get the best bid. So generally, we have, I don't know, maybe 10 to 20 suppliers call us every year trying to get pricing and get in, but we're already locked in pretty low. So they have the expertise and hire somebody who just is an attorney just for utilities. So we get that benefit of just being a member of that.
Gotcha. What are some concerns about how things are money at the school that you've heard from the community? What are people saying about obviously it's not passed 3 times. So what are some concerns people have had that you've heard?
Yeah, we have not heard like you're wasting our money, you're spending it inappropriate. We haven't heard a whole lot of that. Maybe more of the talk has been more general of the community on how the schools plays a part in that, of how our community has changed and how that directly affects our schools. So we have to, as community change, we change because we take every kid that comes in, no matter where they're from, we get to educate them, and we find it a privilege to be able to do that and try to provide them everything that they need. The school is a vital part of the household. I mean, we get some of these kids longer than some of their parents, just like we go to work more than we are at home. And so we become that nurturer, that educator, that mentor, and it's a lot of stuff that we have to provide for all of our kids.
Times have changed a lot because it didn't used to be like that. We have so many support positions now, like social worker, behavior coach, because there's so much mental health issues going on in the community. So we've had to change things and add positions to address those situations.
Yeah, I recently asked a mom what she thought it would take for things to change in the school, and not so things like discipline and communication. That's been in the paper and everyone talks about it, so
yeah,
nothing new. But she said those problems aren't isolated to the schools, it's a community in general problem. So until the community can address some of the issues that it has, the school is not going to be able to change. It's a reflection of the community in some ways.
Right.
I totally believe that.
So if you haven't heard any concerns, people can still contact you guys if they have concerns, right?
Of course.
And we'll give the email addresses in a second here. But what do you think is the value of a public school? Even if people don't want to pay more taxes per se, what is the value of having a public school?
It's a good question. I think a school district is a vital part of a community. As I talked about, we take everybody in. A lot of people in Wilmington don't leave Wilmington. And so as they get educated and go back out, they're going to be the people we see every day. So we may get them for 12 years. This community might get them for 40 or 50, 60 more. And education on that part, home values. I mean, we live in the district, and the school and who comes and who's it attract and what businesses are here. That's all interconnected. The whole community, you can't take a piece of any of them out and it survive.
Mm-hmm.
So I think school's a vital piece of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Kim, what are your thoughts? You've been here for a long time, so you said you've went through the school system. You have kids that have gone through the school system.
I do. Well, of course, I think they're a vital part of the community. I mean, you have to have good schools. You have to have good schools in the community, and that's what a lot of people look at when they're looking to move into the community. How are the schools doing? So, they're a big part of the community. And the thing is, like Curt said, we have to accept every kid, no matter what. We accept all kids. So community schools or what's the other, parochial schools, private schools, correct. They don't have all the stipulations that the public schools have. So I just think public schools are great.
Well, one of the other things that I think is neat, that when you start talking about schools, everybody thinks about academics. Well, that's important. The other part is that people get to see, you come from all walks of life and you get to share that within the walls. We have, anywhere from FFA to art, and people get to find their niche through other stuff. Academic team, we have, different clubs and stuff. And I think it's important that people share their perspective. And, even though we're a community, we all comes from a different background, and it gives us a chance to see those. And these kids get to experience things. Even if it's to walk up to the local government and see how that's done. My kid who never gets to see that, and all of a sudden she's sitting at the mayor's office or at the courthouse, and it's a whole new conversation at home, and just get exposed to so much different things.
Yeah, we were talking to Carrie Ziegler earlier, and she was saying how public schools give people a chance to interact with people that they normally wouldn't interact with because of social economics or skin color or whatever. You accept everybody, and people have to be around those kind of different people, and you kind of build a tolerance and appreciation for that kind of people. Mm-hmm. So builds community that way.
Yeah.
Very cool. Any closing thoughts that you want to address to the community about this upcoming levy situation?
No, we would just appreciate their support. One of the things that you often hear is, well, my kids have already graduated. But when you make roots and you live in a community, there was people before you that have supported you and your kids. And, it's just like supporting your whole community, your property values and what's here. It's preservation a little bit. So appreciate any comments. If they have questions, feel free to reach out. I think it's important to answer those. Much easier a one-on-one if somebody wants to come and talk and you have questions. Kind of open book. We can show you whatever and then talk about those. I think differences are better talked in person than it is throwing them on a public platform where you can just spat out what you want and run and hide in your room. But always open to have conversations about what's going on, how it's being spent, and if you have suggestions on how to be better, we're open to listen to that. Yeah.
So how can people contact you?
I can be reached, email is probably the easiest. It's curt.bone@wilmington.k12.oh.us. It's a mouthful. Or if it's easier, you can also call my desk, 937-283-7500.
I will link to your email address in the notes.
Yeah, because it is a long one.
And Kim, what is your contact information?
My email address is kim.deweese, DEWEESE, @wilmington.k12.oh.us. And my direct line is 937-283-7493.
Cool. Thanks for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Seriously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that is it for our episode. I hope that you enjoyed hearing from Curt and Kim. Again, if you have additional questions, please feel free to go to the school's website, find their contact information, and schedule a meeting with them to discuss that. Any closing thoughts, Emily?
I think it's just important, the overall feel of the podcast. I think Curt Bone summed it up really well by saying that the educators at our public schools, they are not just educating our children, our city's children, in math and reading and history and all of that. They are also educating them to be happy and functional members of our community. And helping pass this levy to give them those opportunities is something that we should all really be thinking about right now.
Yeah, I think he said that the school gets them for 12 years, but the community might get them for like 30 years. Mm-hmm. So it is important. Public schools are important for that reason. So again, I just want to reiterate, this school levy has failed 3 times in a row. So maybe let's try something different this time, folks. And I don't think yard signs alone are going to get it passed. I think that teachers and administration need to take responsibility to communicate all the great things that they're doing and the value of the public schools, and empower people to understand that they can create change, real change, without just saying no to the school levy. And if you're a community member or a parent listening to this podcast, I think that you also need to take responsibility, like Emily and I are doing, and asking the questions to the people who can answer them and seeing ways that we can create real change without saying no. Things like going to board meetings, being part of teacher organizations, and just having a more constructive voice than voting no and saying no on the school levy.
And I mean, if you want to educate yourself more on what passing this levy could do for our schools, not just the kids, but the whole school, and learn more about how much you would be paying per month if the levy passed, you should visit their website, www.voteyeswcs.com.
Yeah, there's a cool little slider on there that will tell you how much money per month that you will pay, estimate, based on your adjusted gross income. With that, I am Dustin Pierce.
And I'm Emily Spencer.
Keep it real, Wilmington.